Revealed. 3 common foods you must avoid with eggs. The incredible health impact on seniors. Carol stood in her sunlit kitchen, the sweet smell of breakfast engulfing her senses. Today was Sunday, her favorite day, where the warm golden hues danced through the window, and her grandchildren would soon fill the house with their laughter. Yet, an unshakable unease lingered in the air like a heavy fog. News headlines flashed through her mind, alarming revelations and new risks. She shook her head as if dismissing the thoughts, focusing instead on whisking the eggs in front of her. Fluffy scrambled eggs, the dish that bound her family together week after week. Her son's voice echoed from last week, a sharp reminder to consider her health. "You really should see the doctor, Mom." The dread of that appointment nagged at her, but today, it was all about family traditions, something she could embrace without hesitation. Or so she tried to convince herself. As she sautéed onions, her heart raced with each clink of the spatula. Memories of vibrant Sunday gatherings, an uproar of sharing stories, inside jokes, and the feeling of unbreakable bonds were suddenly overshadowed with doubt. Was she doing right by her family? What if her beloved scrambled eggs were now linked to health issues she didn't fully understand? Conflicted thoughts twisted in her stomach. Just then, Jake burst into the kitchen, a ball of energy and enthusiasm. Despite his recent graduation, Carol couldn't shake the feeling that he was more of an outsider than ever before. As he surveyed the kitchen, she noticed the slight crease between his brows when he learned of her traditional breakfast routine. "What do you usually pair with the eggs, Grandma?" Jake asked, skepticism lurking behind his gentle smile. The question hung there, heavy and potent, a ticking clock with no familiar rhythm. Milk, butter, bacon, things she'd used for years, staples of care and love. The innocent familiarity of it now felt threatened. With tentative curiosity, Jake began to dive into dietary science, revealing the shocking facts about those very pairings. His voice was layered with concern. "Grandma, some of those foods can pose serious risks for seniors." Just then, she was lost. "What do you mean?" she stammered, the warmth from the stove now feeling critical, suffocating. She envisioned joy slipping from their gatherings, the laughter fading, replaced by a cold, clinical approach to what she held sacred. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The breakfast table, laden with her lovingly prepared dishes, was now a battleground. Her grandchildren split. Some sided with Jake, hungry for modern knowledge. Others defended Grandma's cherished legacy, keen to keep the warmth of Sundays alive. The debate ignited a pang of betrayal deep within her. Food, once a unifying theme, was now pulling them apart. The very fabric of their family felt fragile. As Jake pressed to take her on a tasting journey, she felt her heart harden. Could she really replace the ingredients that shaped her family's history? With every stir of the pan, her thoughts spiraled darker. Would changes to recipes transform her legacy? What if applying new wisdom meant tearing apart the root of their connection? In a moment of clarity, she offered Jake a taste of her renowned eggs, watching his expression transform into a blend of nostalgia and confusion as silence engulfed the room. The fear that gripped her tightened. This wasn't just about breakfast. It was about her identity, her role. Would she risk losing more than just favorite recipes? Amidst the soft golden lights streaming through the windows, Carol stood on the precipice of change, questioning how she could blend her cherished past with the evolving knowledge of her family without losing the essence of who she was. As the table set quietly waited, a storm brewed in her heart, unresolved emotions swirling, leaving an anxious tension that poised the questions needing answers in the weeks to come. Carol stood amidst the dissonance that had erupted in her kitchen, the scent of her beloved breakfast now seeming to mock her inner turmoil. The table, once born of warmth and cheer, had transformed into an arena of conflicting perspectives. The laughter of her grandchildren, a sound she cherished, was suddenly cloaked in tension, a bittersweet reminder of what stood in jeopardy. She felt the urge to retreat into familiar patterns, to reassure herself that Sunday mornings would always embrace comfort food and tradition. Yet the reality of Jake's concerns and the half-hearted defenses from some of her other grandchildren made her stomach churn. It wasn't just food they spoke of, it was change, an impending shift she feared could unravel their familial bond. The thought of seeing a doctor nagged at her like a persistent taunt. How could she step into a sterile office and come face to face with the reality of her health? Guilt washed over her. Had she not always been the one to prioritize her family's well-being? Now, she hesitated to acknowledge her own health. What would she find out? Would her favorite dish become an anchor or an albatross? Jake, seemingly oblivious to her inner conflict, resumed his conversation with fervor. He discussed the importance of balanced diets and the potential dangers of modern science woven into food preparation. A part of her appreciated the knowledge he wanted to impart, yet another part recoiled at the implications of it all. The loss of her culinary heritage felt imminent. "Grandma, look, it's not about replacing everything at once," Jake continued, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. "We can look at alternative ingredients. Enjoy taste while being mindful of health." For a brief moment, Carol felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a way to make small adjustments without sacrificing those treasured moments with her family. She pictured new, healthier recipes adorned with their laughter and stories. Yet, the fear of venturing into the unknown still loomed large. What if those alternatives didn't taste right? What if her family rejected them altogether? As her thoughts cascaded in a whirlwind, moments from her own life flickered past. There was a time when change felt exhilarating, when she embraced new experiences wholeheartedly. Wasn't that how she had raised her children, encouraging them to try new things? When had she begun avoiding change as if it were a fearsome adversary? With determination rising, she resolved to examine her ingredients not as threats, but as opportunities. The prospect of a culinary reinvention stirred something inside her. The notion of exploring the vast world of healthier recipes became a glimmer of possibility, sparking her creative instincts long dulled by routine. "You know," Carol finally interjected, her voice steadying, "maybe we can try integrating some new ingredients. Change can be good if it's done thoughtfully." Jake brightened at her response, while the room buzzed with excitement, shifting away from debates and toward potential solutions. But even as she smiled and engaged, doubt knocked at her door. Would embracing this change empower her, or would it create a divide more significant than she feared? Her thoughts lingered with a single pressing realization: she couldn't just float on ideas, she had to act. The task was hers to tackle the creation of a new recipe that honored the past while moving toward the future. But the first step sent her heart racing, forcing her to confront her reluctance to trespass into unfamiliar territory. As her grandchildren chatted excitedly about possible combinations, a singular thought anchored her. What if her resistance was merely a comfort zone wrapped in nostalgia? And if she began breaking free from its confines, what more could she discover not only about food but about herself? Today was just the beginning. With determination, she reached for her phone. Perhaps it was time to delve into the world of healthy cooking blogs or online cooking classes. The moment of truth lingered on the horizon, and she sensed a shift, one that could redefine who she was within her family. But what awaited beyond the novel and daunting culinary path? How would she balance the weight of tradition with the motivations of a new era? As hope blended with trepidation, Carol tightened her grip, ready to forge ahead, despite the uncertainty that loomed as her next obstacle approached. Carol sat at the edge of her kitchen counter, scrolling through the endless array of healthy cooking blogs. Each picture-perfect dish showcased vibrant ingredients, but too often, they felt alien, uncomfortably distant from the rustic charm of her traditional recipes. She felt a dissonance between her culinary roots and the emerging possibilities sprawled like a kaleidoscope across her screen. What did it mean to transform her cooking? More importantly, what did it mean to transform herself? Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard as she sorted through the myriad articles promising health benefits and weight loss miracles. She took a deep breath, focusing on the content rather than the presentation. This was about her family, about feeding them well and nourishing their spirits as she had done for decades. She opened a new tab and searched for cooking classes. The thought was intimidating, yet enticing. Would she really be willing to step outside the comforting cocoon of her kitchen, where she had reigned as the queen for so long? Could she tolerate the vulnerability of learning in front of strangers? Her heart raced a symphony of excitement and fearful doubt. She could picture the scenarios, the chef's feigned encouragement, the other participants, younger and bubbling with energy, whipping through techniques she could barely comprehend. But then, another image intruded. Her family gathered around a table, laughter flowing as they tasted her healthier versions of the foods they loved. Carol decided to plunge into the waters of possibility. With renewed determination, she registered for a local cooking class that focused on healthy recipes. A wave of relief washed over her, mingled liberally with unease. It was just one class, certainly manageable. Still, the commitment felt monumental, as though she had just signed on for a journey to an unknown realm. That next Sunday came sooner than she anticipated. As she drove to the culinary school, her mind turned over all the justifications she had rationalized in the days leading up to this moment. The air felt thick with both potential and a heavy cloud of self-doubt. No more were the traditional Sundays where simple pancakes and bacon harmonized perfectly with her family's morning conversations. Stepping out of her car, Carol felt the weight of her choices. The brick facade of the cooking school loomed ahead, towering both physically and metaphorically. What if I ruin everything? She whispered to herself, wishing for a moment to retreat. But her feet marched forward, disregarding the conversation that lingered inside her head. As she entered the classroom, the warm aroma of spices and fresh herbs tickled her senses. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the assortment of gleaming kitchen tools and friendly, enthusiastic participants. They were chatting like old friends, completely at ease. She stood at the back, feeling like an interloper. A chef with an inviting smile introduced himself and began the class. Carol found herself drawn in as he demonstrated techniques she had never encountered: spiralizing vegetables, using herbs in innovative ways, crafting meals vibrant with color and life. She felt a spark igniting within her. As the class progressed, Carol struggled initially, fumbling with the unfamiliar techniques, which only amplified her insecurities. But an unexpected support emerged from her classmates. They offered encouragement, sharing their own cooking blunders with laughter. For the first time, she felt that she wasn't alone in her quest for change. Amidst the playful chaos of spirited cooking, her heart began to lift. Each task became a little easier, revealing her hidden affinity for creating flavor profiles, creating joy, and perhaps creating a bridge toward her family's acceptance of healthier living. After the class, as she savored the meal they had crafted together, Carol realized that this was more than just a culinary endeavor. It was about redefining her role within her family. She envisioned herself bringing this newfound knowledge home, creating meals that honored tradition yet embraced change. Yet beneath this excitement lay a daunting question. Would her family embrace her altered approach to cooking? As they sat together around the table in their familiar setting, laughter dancing through the air, she wondered, was her leap into this unknown going to be met with open arms or with reluctance? The thought lingered as she stepped outside, catching a glimpse of the setting sun, its glow casting long shadows across her path. There was a shift in the air around her, an acknowledgement of the unknown, of choices yet to be made. Just then, her phone dinged with a message from Jake, asking if they could try a healthier recipe together next Sunday. Her pulse quickened. It was time to confront the moment, to bridge the gap between her cherished past and the uncertain future of a redefined recipe. Would she have the courage to dive into this next phase, or would tradition tether her to her fears? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Carol steeled herself for the important conversation awaiting her, one that would signal her commitment to both her family and herself. Carol sat in her cozy living room, lost in thought as shadows flickered against the walls. The leanings of her profession as a home cook had always brought her a sense of comfort, a shield against the uncertainties of life. Yet now, the dawn of change loomed before her, shrouded in its complexities. The message from Jake echoed in her mind, urging her to take a leap she had only begun to fathom. She envisioned him, their oldest son, flipping through the recipe book she'd discovered at the cooking class. The glossy pages promised meals bursting with flavor and striking colors, fueling her ambition, but the fear sat like a stone in her stomach. Would he appreciate her efforts? Or would he scoff at her new direction? This was more than an experiment in cooking. It was a shift in how she wanted to nourish and connect with her family. As evening settled, she pored over her notes, recalling the chef's words about creating not just meals but experiences. Excitement bubbled within her, mixing with simmering apprehension. Could she weave her cherished family traditions into healthier recipes? The thought invigorated her. That night, she decided to take action. She gathered her family's favorite recipes, scrutinizing them for ways to weave in healthy alternatives. She opened her computer, tracking her progress on the family's usual pancake recipe, eager to replace white flour with almond flour and conventional sugar with honey. Each substitution felt like a statement of intent, a vow to embrace tradition while introducing innovation. The following day, she found herself at the local farmer's market, feeling a rush of adrenaline. The air was rich with the aromas of fresh produce, and she wandered from stall to stall, filled with possibilities. Vibrant vegetables and arrayed spices ignited her creativity. She selected organic zucchinis, ripe avocados, and a multitude of herbs. As she filled her basket, each item embodied her commitment to not just healthy cooking, but improved family well-being. That evening, when she called her family for dinner, the atmosphere felt different. Nervous, but resolute, Carol presented her healthier version of their beloved pancake breakfast, topped with fresh berries and a drizzle of agave syrup. "Wow, Mom, these look amazing," Jake exclaimed, cutting into his stack with a smile. Carol's heart warmed, simultaneously buoyed by his enthusiasm and overshadowed by lingering doubt. Her gaze flickered to Michael and Lily, her other children. She observed their skeptical glances, holding back their first bites. The laughter from earlier was clouded by an unspoken question: would they accept this change? As Jake took his first mouthful, she held her breath, caught between hope and anxiety. "These are actually really good. Can we have them again?" The relief coursing through her was instantaneous, transcending mere food. That small victory whispered to her heart. Transformation was possible. But then, she caught sight of Michael hesitating and Lily pushing her plate aside. The reality of resistance returned in unexpected waves. Faced with a potential rejection of her efforts, Carol felt the stirrings of doubt again. Did her commitment to evolve worth sacrificing harmony at the dinner table? The next few days became a delicate dance. Each mealtime was a negotiation, a battle between fear of dismissal and unwavering resolve. Carol found solace and strength in her growing knowledge, diving deeper into cooking techniques learned from her class. She explored unconventional pairings and ways to incorporate familiar flavors into healthier options that resonated with her family's palate. Yet, as she honed her craft, a troubling thought began to take form. Was she merely forcing the change upon her family, or could she encourage their own exploration of healthier choices? Would they find joy in these new experiences, or would her resolve create distance? An urgent message from her culinary instructor ignited another wave of enthusiasm: an upcoming community potluck. Each student was encouraged to showcase their new skills. Carol knew this was an opportunity to invite Jake and the others into the process, framing it not just as her journey, but as theirs. But doubts still lingered like shadows. Would the potluck be a buffer against her fears, or would it amplify them? As Carol prepared for this momentous reveal, the stakes felt awfully high. The time had come to face her family again, to open their hearts to a transformative culinary experience together, and to confront the crux of her journey. Could she withstand the challenge of leading them while allowing their voices to be heard? With the potluck on the horizon, questions loomed ahead like a storm brewing in the distance, threatening to drown out the light she was beginning to cultivate. Would this gathering forge ties, or could it spell the end of her newfound passion? Carol braced for the pivotal moment ahead, her mind racing with possibilities, fears, and the relentless drive to bridge hearts through food. As the days lingered before the potluck, Carol felt the weight of expectations settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Each ingredient she picked for her potluck dish felt laden with significance, the decision-making process unraveling into a daily ritual. Should she focus on a familiar family favorite transformed a healthy lasagna, perhaps, or venture into uncharted territory with a vibrant quinoa salad? Each day presented a new conundrum, threading nerves through her resolve. In private moments, her mind replayed her children's reactions, shifting between Jake's encouraging nods and Michael's hesitant frown. Carol mused over her approach. Was it her duty to guide this transition, or should she allow her children to take part in reshaping their eating habits? Could encouraging them to contribute help dissolve their reluctance? This internal dialogue was both reassuring and confounding. One late afternoon, as she chopped fresh vegetables in a meditative rhythm, a thought struck her with startling clarity. What if she invited them to brainstorm ideas for the potluck? This wasn't solely about her culinary ambitions. It could evolve into a family narrative where each member had a role. A gentle excitement began to blossom. She could encourage them to experiment with healthier ingredients, transforming their resistance into a collaborative adventure. "Hey, team," she announced at dinner the next night, hoping to mask her nervous tone with enthusiasm. "I was thinking, why don't we all come up with something fun for the potluck?" Michael paused, his fork suspended midair. "Like what?" he asked, curiosity creasing his brow. "Anything. You could suggest dishes or ingredients you've wanted to try. Let us explore it together." Carol's voice brimmed with conviction, her heart beating faster. This opening created a platform for dialogue, the very connection she had been yearning for. The anticipation hung in the air like a sweet perfume. Slowly, as she made suggestions, Michael began to nod, while Lily's eyes sparked with interest. They began mapping out possibilities: a grilled veggie kebab, a fruit-infused water station, a healthy dessert that didn't compromise on taste. A collaborative energy enveloped the table and ignited Carol's determination. Yet, doubt slunk back in, gnawing at her like a persistent itch. What if, in their excitement, they crafted dishes that clashed with her vision? Would they be okay with blending new flavors? Or was this experiment a recipe for conflict? Torn between optimism and trepidation, Carol focused on the open dialogue evolving around her. In the lead-up to the potluck, the kitchen transformed. Family discussions moved from mere recipes to shared flavors, each culinary session intertwined with laughter and unanticipated insights. Carol overheard Michael exchanging ideas with Jake on the complexities of herbs, while Lily animatedly suggested spices from her favorite ethnicity, signaling an engagement that brought light to Carol's purpose. When the day arrived, the smell of her prepared dishes wafted through the home, mingling with the sense of her children's contributions. Together, they had bridged gaps spanning taste and health, creating a mosaic of flavors reflective of their unity. Carol felt pride swelling within. For the first time in recent memory, her kitchen mirrored their collective spirit. But as she arranged the dishes for the potluck, her heart raced with another fear: would her neighbors embrace their fresh approach, or would the culinary venture flop? Perhaps the solace she sought through cooking was nestled in acceptance not just from her family, but from the outside world. As the door swung open, revealing their neighbors with curious eyes, Carol took a deep breath, ensuring her smile masked the tremors of anticipation. This was her leap, her response to the call for transformation woven deep within the fabric of family and community. Would this showcase bring the acceptance she desperately craved, or the harsh critique that could shatter her confidence? The uncharted waters of communal judgment awaited, and with that thought, Carol stepped into the crowd, ready to unveil her heart and overcome the tide of uncertainty. As Carol stepped into the swirl of laughter and chatter, she scanned the familiar faces surrounding her, each harboring their own expectations. The bright colors of her carefully arranged dishes glimmered in the soft late-afternoon light, but the radiant plates felt suddenly heavy in her hands, as if they might sink under the weight of scrutiny. Would her attempts to blend creativity with health resonate, or would they be dismissed as mere fads? She positioned the last dish, vibrant quinoa salad adorned with bright peas, radishes, and a tangy citrus dressing, at eye level among the others, taking a moment to relish its vivid hues. Each spoonful she prepared had been crafted not just with ingredients, but infused with an aspiration for transformation. This was not merely food, it represented change. Change she hoped would be embraced. As neighbors approached, Carol felt her heart race. Conversations flowed around her as she settled into the role of host, but she was acutely aware of how her contributions would be assessed. "What did you make, Carol?" came the earnest inquiry from Mabel next door, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. The question buzzed like a fly in her mind, pulling her deeper into her mental spiral. Would her homemade sauces blend well with the traditional spreads? Would they appreciate the natural sweetness without hidden sugars? Just a couple of dishes, Carol replied, her attempt at casualness almost failing. There's a quinoa salad and some grilled veggies. I thought they might be a bit different. Mabel, considering the offerings, prompted a fleeting moment of silence before she launched into a gleeful monologue about her own favorite potluck dishes. Carol seized this opportunity, crafting their conversation into a learning experience, asking Mabel how she paired flavors in her renowned casseroles. Each response ignited a small flame of confidence within Carol. Engaging in this exchange reminded her of the genuine connections she sought to foster with her cooking, not simply with her family, but within her broader community. With more guests gathering around, Carol felt the pulse of the potluck begin to thrum. The savory scents wafting from the buffet mingled perfectly with the laughter and the exuberant chatter. For every praise lobbed toward Michael's fruit-infused water or Jake's delightful veggie kebabs, Carol found herself wading deeper into unfamiliar waters of acceptance. However, as the night wore on, her gaze settled on a small group debating the balance of flavors from her quinoa salad. Their voices held an edge, slicing through the warmth she had wished to envelop everyone. It tastes different, one neighbor remarked, trying to mask disappointment with politeness. Carol's stomach turned. The familiar crinkle of a brow was merely a reflection of her own insecurities about this venture. Different could mean better, she reminded herself silently, yet anxiety swirled in her chest. Each conversation gripped her, stepping past tentative interest and crashing into uncertainty. The weight of expectation gnawed away at her resolve to stand firm. She had put her heart into sharing something new, something healthier, but was it too much to expect acceptance? With that thought pulling her thoughts into a downward spiral, Carol recognized an opportunity. She needed to reclaim her narrative. With renewed determination, she approached the table, not as a mere contributor, but as a storyteller of her culinary journey. "I'd love to hear what everyone thinks," she said, offering an invitation to discuss flavors and preferences. Every voice mattered. This wasn't about her single dish, but the myriad reactions weaving a tapestry of shared experiences. She could incorporate their input, turning criticism into constructive feedback. As guests began to share their thoughts, abandoning initial reservations, a sense of camaraderie began to emerge. In that moment, Carol realized the true potency of vulnerability. The act of sharing not only food but the stories behind them connected her with those around her. It was a lesson in humility, capturing every spark of enthusiasm while reconciling the fear of judgment that still lingered. As she absorbed their feedback, she understood. Growth happened not only through success, but also through navigating discomfort. Each bite taken not only represented culinary choices, but echoed the choices made at the dinner table, reinforced the bridges she was building. As she smiled at a compliment from her neighbor, the prospect of future potlucks glimmered in her mind like a bright horizon. But just as the conversations built momentum, a figure emerged from the dim light, filled with certainty. A local food critic she had never expected to encounter. The air thickened with anticipation. This was an unexpected test, and Carol felt the familiar rise of anxiety clawing back into her chest. Would this encounter define her path, or could she turn it into another opportunity for transformation? The moment of truth hung in the air, and as the critic approached, Carol took a deep breath, preparing to rediscover her voice in this new environment. As the critic approached, Carol could feel the weight of his scrutinizing gaze. Instinctively, her mind raced through every dish on the table, replaying the preparation processes like a film loop, humming with the anxiety of judgment. This was not merely a matter of flavors, but the reflection of her commitment to healthier eating, a new chapter in her life that she was still trying to define. "Good evening," he said, his voice rich with authority, as he gestured toward the vibrant spread. "I was intrigued by your quinoa salad." His eyes flickered over the colors, weighing each hue and texture with equal measure. Carol's breath hitched, a swirl of anticipation mingled with dread spiraling through her. Thank you," she managed, forcing her voice to steady in contrast to her erratic heartbeat. "I wanted to explore how traditional dietary norms can incorporate healthier ingredients without sacrificing taste." Subtle, yet proud, she realized she was no longer simply describing a dish. She was articulating her philosophy. He took a small serving, his fork piercing through the colorful vegetables. The seconds felt like an eternity as she watched him chew, searching for clues hidden behind his poised expression. Carol was poised on a precipice between hope and fear, held captive by the hope that he might see the value of her intentions. Interesting approach, he finally said, his brow furrowing ever so slightly. But do you intentionally seek to redefine traditional pairings? His question caught her off guard, and her mind scrambled to find a coherent answer while maintaining her composure. Redefining implies there was a definition I wanted to escape, she replied, her voice firmer now. I prefer to think of it as expansion. Food should grow with our understanding of nutrition. Health doesn't need to come at the expense of flavor. The critic nodded thoughtfully, but the weight of his silence was palpable. It was a dance of intellect and creativity now. Each move required confidence tempered with vulnerability. Your commitment to flavor is admirable, he continued, but some might resist this interpretation if it strays too far from what they consider normal. That bitterness surfaced at the table. You know, the question of what is acceptable. The truth of his statement stung. She couldn't dismiss the murmurs that lingered earlier. I understand. But isn't the essence of cooking an adventure? If we never challenge the status quo, how do we grow? His measured expression offered no hints. But Carol felt the rush of adrenaline filled with clarity, a tangible awareness of the risks she was taking. This was still her journey. Each dish was a step forward, learning an experiment blending health with tradition. Every palate evolves, she added, her determination peaking. And every bite holds the potential for discovery. That's what I'm hoping to share. He regarded her with an intensity that felt almost intrusive, yet she stood grounded in her truth. For moments, the buzz of the potluck faded into the background. Her insecurities wrestled with her aspirations until they began to merge harmoniously. Curiosity crackled in the air. The critic's presence stirred something in her that was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was the softest flicker of potential coming to life. Could she transform his assessment into an opportunity for growth, or would he polarize her efforts into a measure of success or failure? With a subtle nod, he took one last bite, deliberating before setting his fork down. You have a point, he admitted, his voice finally breaking the tension. But would you be open to honest feedback? A collaboration, perhaps? Collaboration, a powerful word that sparkled with promise. It wasn't just about herself. It was a pathway to open dialogues. The hum of conversation shifted as other guests drew nearer, drawn by the intensity of the moment. Carol faced the burgeoning crowd, aware that each pair of eyes was fixed upon her too. She felt an electric current of energy mingled with uncertainty, poised to either embrace or reject the opportunity before her. Yes, she answered, a hint of excitement piercing through her reticence. I'd love to hear your insights. As she spoke, she felt a tether anchoring her spirit, firming her resolve to engage with the challenge that lay ahead. Carol realized this encounter could reshape not just her culinary practices, but how she envisioned her place in the food community. Yet, as feedback flowed around her, uncertainty crept back. What if she wasn't prepared for the depth of critique he might unfold? The possibility of being truly seen for who she was and what she aspired to was exhilarating and terrifying. Was she really ready to transition beyond casual gatherings and embrace a more formidable platform? The prospect of transformation loomed ready at her doorstep, waiting for her decision. The critic leaned closer, his voice lowered. She braced herself for his words. Whatever came next would either mark her ascendance or plunge her back into doubt. Would she be able to seize this pivotal moment, or would it slip through her fingers like grains of quinoa? The critic's gaze flickered with a hint of intrigue as he began to articulate his thoughts. Your approach definitely has merit. However, I'm not just looking for innovation. I'm looking for balance. It's essential to challenge tradition, but there are lines that, if crossed, might alienate your audience. His tone was a mixture of caution and encouragement, drawing Carol further into the web of introspection that had formed between them. Lines. The heaviness of that word sunk deep within her, causing a ripple of discomfort. Were there truly lines she couldn't cross? Was she inadvertently straying too far from the expectations poised by convention, or merely inviting others to explore richer, uncharted territories of taste? Balance, Carol echoed, her mind racing. crafting an internal debate. To embrace innovation meant to take risks, yet the critic's words tangled with her eagerness to break the mold. She mentally sifted through her recent dishes, questioning whether her fledgling philosophy could withstand the scrutiny of accepted norms she had once championed against. She nodded slowly, willing herself to absorb this feedback. What lines, do you think, might I consider when attempting to merge health with tradition? He leaned back, his expression shifting to one of contemplation. Food is a social structure. People derive comfort from what they know, even if it's less healthy. Your ingredients are highly nutritious, but taste requires a foundation of familiarity to which people can relate. Failure to respect that connection impacts how they resonate with your culinary perspective. The critic's insights pierced through her, awakening a latent fear of inadequacy. Comfort. This crucial notion seemed both a safety net and a barrier. How could she honor comfort without sacrificing her mission? Are we not, in essence, risking the comfort for growth? She pressed, determination edging her words. Isn't the potential for discovery worth the discomfort? He raised an eyebrow, visibly appreciating her passion. Absolutely. But the challenge lies in making that discomfort feel like a gentle nudge rather than a shove. You need to construct a bridge, not a wall. Each word he spoke resonated, pulling her further down a path of insight. Could bridging the gap become her new philosophy? She felt a surge of determination flood her senses, igniting the inner resolve she needed to navigate the culinary world. Then that's what I will do, she declared, conviction threading through her voice. I'll act as a guide, a bridge. If I can introduce health through flavors they already love, perhaps I can encourage them to embark on this journey with me. The critic kept his eyes locked on hers, interest written across his features. Now you're thinking like a true culinary artist. But remember, this won't come easy. Each dish you create needs to engage, persuade, and entice. The front lines of this expansion are your experiences and understanding of people's relationships with food. The weight of those words spiraled in her mind, pressing forth shadows of doubt. She recalled countless times she had prepared meals that delighted her friends, whose compliments had curried favor in her culinary ambitions. But each success echoed back a truth she hadn't fully explored. As much as food was about flavor, it was also about connection, comfort, and culture. The crowd pulsed around her, voices rising and falling like a living entity, and she felt its gravity shift. Fear nestled in her stomach again, a creeping anxiety reminding her of the obstacles ahead, adapting recipes to accommodate tastes while still embedding health. She could feel the potent challenge of transformation swirling at her fingertips. What next? She asked gently but firmly, as she sensed the door to collaboration beginning to open. It was a moment charged with potential, the start of something she could feel in her core, the hum of collaboration and growth. Let us get to work, he said, his demeanor shifting from that of a critic to a mentor, his tone invigorating. In that instant, Carol articulated her hopes, to leave this fear behind, to pour her heart into the work knowing the risks, yet driven to build connections. If she was to create a new narrative around her food philosophy, she needed hands willing to mold it, minds ready to engage. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, and she felt a rush of clarity. This was her opportunity for growth, not just as a chef, but as a food advocate. The culinary world was not just hers to navigate, it was one to positively influence. With a renewed sense of purpose, she began to contemplate how her vision for food could reshape not just her career, but to help others step into the unfamiliar. She turned to face the crowd again, glancing at the familiar faces of her peers, feeling more connected to them than ever. But the underlying current of doubt lurked still. Could she truly balance tradition and innovation while remaining true to her mission? A weighty question yet unanswered, a flicker of uncertainty blended with excitement nestled in her heart. As thoughts swirled in her head, she knew one thing. The path before her was laden with potential. Each step would require not just culinary skill, but the finesse to navigate complex relationships within the food culture. What will I uncover about myself in this journey? She wondered aloud, aware that the answer loomed just out of reach. The critic's gaze was striking. Sometimes, the hardest revelations come from the bravest steps. Are you ready to take that leap? The weight of his challenge hung in the air, amplifying the stakes of her transformation. She took a deep breath, marinating in the moment of anticipation. Her answer would define the path ahead. Would she seize the moment, or would hesitation cast a shadow over her burgeoning philosophy? The choices ahead felt heavier now, and as she prepared to respond, the very essence of her being tingled with both anxiety and determination. The time for action had come. Now she had to be brave enough to step into the unknown. Carol's heart thumped in her chest, the critic's words echoing in her mind like a clarion call. Leaning against her countertop, she stared at the array of ingredients splayed before her, the vibrant colors whispering promise. They demanded to be transformed, and within her, a deeper resolve churned. She had stepped into the unknown, but it was that very unknown that could reshape not just her culinary journey, but redefine how others approached food entirely. Taking a step back, she scrutinized her workspace, letting her imagination wander to the meals that once brought joy and comfort to her friends. Those memories birthed a twinge of nostalgia as she envisioned how flavors could dance together, intertwining traditional essence with innovative health consciousness. What tripwires of comfort could she navigate to create a dish that was not only nutritious but also heartfelt? In that moment, uncertainty swirled within her, mingling with a strange excitement. Balance meant redefining favorites without dismissing them entirely. She picked up a jar of spices, her fingers brushing over its surface as she recalled her earliest culinary trainings, where any deviation from tradition seemed tantamount to blasphemy. Yet here she stood, at a precipice, ready to redefine that very boundary. What if she murmured to herself, visualizing possibilities? She considered her grandmother's beloved recipes, thick with history and rich flavor, reimagined with her fresh perspective, zucchini noodles replacing pasta, or almond flour substituting for wheat. Every ingredient could embody a bridge linking familiarity with health. She began to jot down ideas on a notepad, her thoughts racing forward. Each possibility ignited a flicker of hope. What if she could create a cauliflower crust that had the texture of a traditional pizza, yet nourished rather than weighed down? She scribbled down variations, pushing her own boundaries as she envisioned how to communicate these innovations effectively. The intent was to entice, not to alienate. Her mind drifted back to the critic's comment about the architectural nature of food. She envisioned her dishes as bridges sturdy and inviting, fairly navigating tastes across the river of change. Would these elements engage her audience and flow easier into their lives? Could they feel less frustration and more curiosity with each bite? Doubt still loitered, but now it felt different. It was no longer a paralyzing force, but rather a companion urging her to excavate deeper into her purpose. Unfurling that paper, she realized she was not merely a chef. She was a storyteller who could enlist flavors to narrate her vision. As she began to chop and mix, she lost herself in the rhythm of creation, every movement a decision that tied her back to her intentions. She felt eager to experiment. A sprinkle of turmeric instead of traditional garlic, perhaps, or a swirl of avocado instead of butter. Each iteration was a small rebellion against the old, a gentle coaxing of her audience toward a brighter culinary path. But the more she crafted, the more she felt the weight of her mission pressing down. How to ensure that her audience, her friends, her family, future patrons would embrace this new narrative? How would she demonstrate that innovation and tradition could coexist? A loud knock on the door startled her from her thoughts. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened it to find her closest friends, excitedly bearing fresh ingredients and a willingness to taste what she had created. "Smells great in here," one called out, stepping inside. The warmth of their presence fueled her. This was the opportunity to bridge the gap, to share her experimentation in real time. Not just to share her culinary thoughts, but to gauge their reactions, engage their comfort zones. Would they welcome the new, or cling to the old? She could see the glimmer of curiosity in their eyes, and it ignited something within her. "Let us eat," she exclaimed, inviting them to gather around her kitchen island, where her creations awaited. But as the conversation buzzed and platters filled, nagging thoughts crept back in. Would they embrace what she had dreamed up? Would her bridges lead to acceptance or rejection? Carol's heart raced again as she began plating the dishes, anticipation intensifying. Only time would tell if she could tether tradition to innovation. Would this be the start of a movement toward healthier eating? Or would she find herself standing alone, her bridge collapsing in the face of unwavering comfort. As her friends took their first bites, she held her breath, ready for their reactions to either embolden or challenge her newfound philosophy. The tension hung thickly in the air as anticipation writhed within her, every moment dictating the next direction of her journey. Would they feel the nudge to embark with her, or would her ambitions falter in the familiar shadows of resistance? With a sharp intake of breath, she braced herself for the revelation of their truth and her own. Carol stood in the center of her bustling kitchen, a flurry of vibrant colors and delicious scents swirling around her. The potluck had come and gone, but its impact resonated in ways she never anticipated. The last few weeks had been filled with exploration, learning, and honest conversations that had not only enriched her culinary skills, but transformed her perspective on connection, family, and self-acceptance. The critic's words still echoed in her mind, a reminder to find balance while boldly navigating her newfound culinary mission. Embracing health didn't mean scrapping tradition. It invited deeper engagement, an opportunity to evolve her legacy rather than abandon it. This revelation ignited within her a sense of purpose and clarity, as her kitchen overflowed with laughter and excited chatter. She marveled at how her children had collaborated seamlessly to craft various dishes for a family regathering. They were encouraged not just to embrace the new, but to contribute to the journey, one where each member felt welcomed, valued, and invested in their collective culinary experience. Jake had taken the lead with a richly flavored quinoa stuffed bell pepper, brimming with spices that honored both adventure and childhood nostalgia. Michael had brought his twist on Grandma's lasagna, swapping traditional pasta for zucchini noodles while retaining the comforting essence they cherished. Lily proudly presented a fruit-infused water station adorned with herbs and citrus, a refreshing nod to summer's bounty. Each dish represented a thread in the tapestry of their family, weaving familiar favorites with healthier ingredients. Carol felt a surge of pride as she watched her children embrace the spirit of creativity and the joy of discovery. They were learning to communicate their desires and traditions through flavors, inspiring her deeply. Carrying a tray of her own healthier version of the beloved pancake stack, topped with warm mixed berries and a drizzle of honey, she felt an exhilarating sense of accomplishment wash over her. No longer was she paralyzed by the fear of rejection. She had learned to embrace change. This wasn't merely about recipes anymore. It was about nurturing relationships and fostering conversations that mattered. As everyone gathered around the table, anticipation filled the air. Carol prepared to serve her pancakes, and as she did, she marveled at how far she had come from that fraught kitchen conversation with Jake. The warmth enveloping her now was authentic, resilient, and hopeful, an affirmation that change could indeed coexist with deep-rooted affection. "Mom, can we have these pancakes every Sunday?" Jake exclaimed, his enthusiasm infectious as he took his first bite. The room erupted with approval, laughter buoying their spirits. No one hesitated to embrace Carol's healthier adaptations. Rather, they appreciated that evolution was a natural part of growth within their culinary legacy. Yet, amidst this warmth, Carol recognized that her journey was ongoing. She had not only transformed her recipes, but had also reinforced the importance of open dialogue, understanding, and adaptability. Every meal was now a platform for connection, where conversations about health, flavor, and culture flourished. Later that evening, with plates cleared and laughter echoing in her ears, she felt a profound sense of satisfaction settle softly within her heart. The fear that once gripped her was replaced with a firmer resolve. Carol had conquered her fears and embraced the power of experimentation, proving to herself that she could indeed evolve without losing her essence. As the day drew to a close, Carol joined her children on the porch, watching the stars emerge amidst the tapestry of twilight. Reflection flooded her senses as she considered how this journey had not only reshaped her cooking, but had forged stronger bonds within her family. "Next week, let us try something even bolder," she suggested, determined to keep the momentum alive. "Maybe we could explore international cuisines together, perhaps mix Indian spices with familiar dishes." The excitement in her children's eyes was tangible, sparking discussions as they delved into creative possibilities. The conversations flowed seamlessly, and Carol smiled, realizing that her kitchen had indeed become a place of empowerment, a bridge where tradition met innovation. Feeding not just their bodies, but their spirits, she reflected on how far she had educated herself about the art of cooking and its potential impact. She knew that she had successfully laid the foundation for future family gatherings to thrive on collaboration and open-mindedness. Carol felt a solid confidence take root in her, her culinary revolution well underway. This was her transformation, her defined space of growth. And in this moment, she knew without a doubt that she had fulfilled her aspiration to weave health into the tapestry of her family's culinary history while nurturing connections that would thrive for generations to come. The journey, filled with challenges and breakthroughs, stood ready just beyond the horizon. With courage kindled in her heart, Carol stepped boldly forward, ready for whatever adventure awaited her next. You need to subscribe now to never miss out on these transformative stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now. Your engagement feeds the algorithm, allowing others to discover these narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about Carol's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring resolution.